welcome back to Murder Therapy with Doll Talk and Cousin Ashley.
Hola!
Yes, you've had a whole week to decompress from the first very gruesome, terrible, grossness.
Ugh.
Yeah. But unfortunately, as much as I would like to say that things get better in this episode, they don't. They just get
Rand.
worse.
I'm not ready.
Yes, I know. So I'm preparing you ahead of time. But
In our
before
chat,
we,
she's like, "Are you ready to be pissed off?" I was like, "Listen, I did not watch the documentaries or anything to do with this, so I could really see where this was going. But I already have a
Mhm.
hint these boys are about to be fucked. So I'm
Oh
mad.
yeah,
I'm so
royally
mad.
fucked. Well, most people know this is one of those scenarios where it's wrong conviction. Okay, so we know that that's where this is going, but people don't really know the in depth, like all the things that make what makes it so ridiculous. And
Mm,
as much as I would love to say that this is some weird ass story that I made up off the top of my head, unfortunately, this really did happen. At any given moment, you're like, there is no possible way that they really used that in court. I promise you, you can pause us and go and look because there's times that I had to double take, like, did
yeah.
I really just hear what the fuck I heard? Or did I really read that correctly? And go back and reread things. It's just a lot. But
Yeah.
before we dive in, I have a mom and dad story.
We love these. Right,
I
guys? We love
know.
these.
The truth is, people don't listen to us for the true crime. They want to hear the stories about my parents.
I feel like we should have a TV show between our
We
families.
should.
Yeah.
Somebody said that they were like, "You need a TV show," and I was like, "No, we'll." But
We're
they wouldn't
wild.
follow me for me. They would follow us for our family. Like our family is, they're unique. They're unique. But my parents are fantastic. So I had two Christmas parades this weekend. Two.
Yes.
Colin had to march in one last night, and then he had the one today. Okay.
He's a marching
So
beast, you guys.
he is. He's a marching beast.
He's a
He's
marching
very
maniac.
instrumental. Marching maniac. Yes, he is. And I'm so proud of him. Academically, he's thriving. He's turning out to be one fantastic
He's
young
great.
man. But well, no, there's no but with that. But here I'm like, there's no but with that. But sorry. Anywho, my dad is a truck driver. Most people know this. Okay, so he came in so that he could be here for both parades. My
Uncle
mom
Bill.
Yes, my mom loves parades, y'all.
Oh,
Like she
God.
lights up like a Christmas tree. You don't understand. She gets excited. I mean, she does. And she's like, there's candy. And
She's out there.
it's great.
Hercules. Hercules.
Yes, she is. She's going, Claus, Santa Claus. Yeah. She's going to kill me. She's going to be like, don't ever talk about me on there ever again. So, anywho, it's cold as
Oh, gosh.
shit in Virginia. The thing
Mm,
about Virginia is we get 4 seasons of weather in a week. It never fails. You never
mm-hmm.
know what season you're dressing for. So we
It's so
can't put
true.
all our clothes away. It really is. It's a thing. So it got down to 19 degrees tonight. It was super cold. The
Tonight?
parade started no, last
Oh,
night.
okay. Yeah, it was
Last night
cold
at
last
the
night.
while we were at the parade. So here it is I'm sorry, it's 6 p.m. when the parade starts. Okay. This is like the big county parade. So all the high school marching bands are there. I mean, it's a pretty big parade. It's small town, but it's a big parade for us. Sorry, Ash. I know you city folk probably have massive parades, but we had tractors. Look at Ash. He's like,
But
I can't.
I'm
We
well.
did.
Ours isn't too far off. I mean, we have our area where we have the a really big international airport, so we do the air show in July,
Yes,
and we have our
I
air
was
show
there for
parade.
that.
Yeah. Oh, you were. That's right.
Well, yeah, remember?
Yeah, we
I
have
was
our
pregnant with
parades
Cora
on
then.
the Friday before it starts, and that's our big thing. So we do that,
Yeah.
and it's okay. It's little, I think. So
Well, so sorry, I had to open up my notes again. I'm using my notes on my phone for this time. But anywho, so last night the parade's going. Here comes Colin. My brother was there. My brother's wife, like Colin, had a big support system to
Oh,
watch him. We're all freezing our ass off. Okay,
Stephen
because the
Kelly, we
other
love
two
him.
high schools, yes, Steve and Callie, my brother and my sister-in-law, the boy's dad and his friend came. They had a big support. Some cars there. He forgot his bag. There was a ton of candy. His dad had brought him chicken nuggets from McDonald's, so he was in this McDonald's paper bag for his candy.
Who? Oh,
Okay, so
Brandon brought him McDonald's.
Yeah, Brandon had brought Carson McDonald's, so
He was
and the
probably
bag is
stoked.
ripping. Oh yeah, he was stoked. So it's like ripping the bag because there's so much candy. Like I mean, it was a big parade, right? So Colin comes. My brother yells at Colin. He would not make eye contact because I was like, "Yay! It's the marching band! Go, Colin!" And he's like, "Oh my god, I'm not going to look."
Oh,
And my brother yells because so my son plays the mallets when they're at band competitions during stand tunes, but when they're marching, because he can't carry his instrument, there's no strap made for his instrument. He does the cymbals. He's the cymbals kid. So Steve goes, "Play them cymbals, boy," as loud as he possibly can. And Colin's just like, I can see it on his face. He's like, "Fuck my life." Like, he kept going. So, of course, Mom's like, "I'm cold. I'm done with this." Well, you think it's over, but Santa hasn't came yet. And you look halfway down the road, and like half the parade is barely making it because these kids keep stopping, right? Mom gets in the car behind us, like she's in the heat. We're waiting because I want Carson to see Santa, all the things, right? When they finally get to us, there's these karate kids because there's karate in our town, and they're like doing these tricks and stuff. And it's, but my dad makes a point. He's like, "The parade is up there. You all are." I'm like, "Oh my God, leave it to my dad." He's like, "You all need to speed it up. The parade is way up there. Like you are holding this." And I was turning. I was like, Dad keeps telling everyone, like, as if they don't know that the parade is way ahead of them. Like he kept on. And I was like, "Oh my God." But yeah, so we got to see Colin march twice this
I
weekend.
love that
So.
Uncle Bill made it to where he could be there. We don't talk about him very much on here, do we?
No, we don't. We
He's a
don't.
big
So that's my
goofball.
dad.
He's a big goofball. We
He
love him.
is. And I'm like, "Dad, they know. They know. You don't have to remind them. Like, you need to stop." He's like, "Well, it's cold out here. People are getting tired."
He's very practical.
He is.
I'll give one of my favorite memories ever, and we tell this to Uncle Bill all the time. They have a lot of land, and they have dirt bikes and 4-wheelers when we were growing up, and they had multiple, and Jody and I were on one 4-wheeler and he was on the other. And was it him trying to he picked up the dog water bowl and tried to splash us with the dog water bowl
Yes.
while we were
Yeah,
on the
that's my
4-wheeler.
life.
Yeah,
I know. And Ashley's like, What is Uncle Bill doing?" I was like, "I don't know. I don't pay any attention to him." Like,
no.
yeah.
He was trying
Yep,
to get
that's
the
my life.
hose, like hoses. It was terrible, but yeah, he's a fun time. He's a hunter. He's a trucker, so he's always gone. We don't get it. I mean, every time I'm there, I get to see him. So
Yeah,
not
I
gone a
mean,
lot.
hopefully, fingers crossed for. I'm hoping he'll retire soon, so him and Mike can get more time together and stuff.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. He's
She
like his
she needs
whole
less
life.
time with Katie and more with Bill.
Yeah. Poor Katie. That's her dog. That's not a person. The dog's name is Katie. My son named Katie. But yeah. So, did you have a good weekend? Have you had a good weekend?
I did. Ryan did a Toys for Tots show last night. We do it every year.
I saw.
It's our favorite show. We had boxes at a local restaurant, boxes at a local dollar store because we have people in our group that work at both, and then we had 3 boxes there. We filled up almost all 3 boxes full of toys for kids. So it was a good show. So
Good.
Yep.
I seen something because I know Aunt Sue did a craft thing
Yeah.
this weekend. And then I saw your post, like you didn't know that minors had to be out by like 10 or something. Was that Ryan's show? Or was that the craft show?
No, that was Ryan's show. So we were under the
Okay,
understanding
that makes so much more sense.
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to do an all-age show. for the Toys for Tots, and we were we probably could have went until like midnight, 12:30 ish. A good amount of the artists in the back end of the time slots didn't get to go, so we had to cram them and rush because we thought we had a little bit more time. And they're like, well, remember, all the minors have to be out by 11. We were like, what? We weren't told that. And they're accompanied by their parents.
I seen your post later, like about the show, the Toys for Tots thing.
Yeah.
But I had seen Aunt Sue's post earlier, so when I saw your post, like, I didn't know that minors had to be out by 10. I'm like, what kind of craft show did Aunt Sue?
Actually, funny fact, Mom's craft show was at a bar. It's a local bar around here in the Oregon district. Yeah. But
I love that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Do shows. They do all kinds of stuff.
I love it.
So, yeah.
I know Jay's going to be like...
And then today
Jay's going to be like, Jody said, I love it, like 18 times.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, today was Steelers.
Today was
yes.
football day. You know, we're religious Steelers. Well, my son's a Ravens fan, but he doesn't count. Ryan and I are religious Steelers fans. And we beat the Browns. We had to redeem ourselves.
I think you're old enough to know that you're adopted now.
He's known he's adopted his whole life. It's fine.
Yeah, okay. So,
but it was good.
We got out the good things.
Yes.
Now I give you bad things.
Garbage.
Sorry. So, again, I like to reiterate, we will be talking about children being murdered. As much as I don't like to talk about that, but we will. I read something over the weekend pertaining to this because I like to go back and dig because there's so much. Like, this is such a to me, it's a well-known case in the true crime realm. Apparently, other people don't know this case very well, or they've heard of it, but they haven't really done their dumpster diving, so on and so forth. But there's so much out there. There's books out there. There's articles. There's documentaries. There's, celebrities ended up getting involved in this. Wow. That's how big this went. Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yes. So forgive me because I need to correct something that I said on the last episode.
What'd you say?
Quick. Yes. Well, I love it. She goes, what'd you say? So we are going to go back to the Bloody Bojangle. Okay.
The restaurant?
Remember how yes. Now, I did know at some point that they did go back and look, but not thoroughly. It wasn't a very thorough investigation. I will say that. That is accurate. What I didn't realize is, so this is where I need to correct myself, so forgive me. It was within a few days after the 3 little boys were found that the manager called the police again, and they're like, we made a call the other night when all this had happened, and we had that guy here. Do you want to come and investigate? So apparently police did go back. And so they did go back.
Okay.
It wasn't a very thorough investigation. They did actually obtain a blood sample at the Bloody Bojangle. Yes. And we'll dive back into that again in this episode. So forgive me. I knew that something had been obtained from there, and I thought it would be in this episode, so I needed to correct myself about the Bloody Bojangle, so forgive me. There's just a lot. And when you guys go and watch these documentaries, because I know a lot of people do, I've had many people pop up in my live streams, and they're like, I've listened to this case, and I watched this, and oh my God, it's crazy. And I'm like, good. So I know some of you all will. I know Ashley wants to. Once we complete everything, you're good. But yeah, so I just wanted to correct that. So this is where we're going to dive into Jesse Miss Kelly's confession. Okay. This is where we're going to dive into the court case and how that all played out. And we're going to talk about some evidence that came into play. Okay. So prepare for your blood to boil. If I become biased, because I'm sorry, I do get biased, but I'm reading you off facts. Ashley's going to tell me, okay, now you're taking it a little far. She's going to reel me back in.
I'm going to try, but I'm feeling the same vibe right now.
Yeah, well, it's hard not to.
Okay.
It's very hard not to. So where we left off, the police had just picked up Jesse. They were taking him to the police station. Now, in case you all have forgot, you need to remember that Jesse, the IQ, it's literally 70 IQ. He dropped out of He had a 3rd grade reading level. He had a really good way of masking his disability, right? But, I mean, it's like a 5-year-old in a grown man's body.
Yeah.
He was 17 years old. He did not have a GED. He literally, like, helped his dad. This boy's ambition in the 1st grade was to be a professional. I mean, go big, homie, but, like, that's the reality of it.
I mean, okay.
Like,
it's back and it's popular again, but I will say we determined, like, you were 3 and I was 4 when this was happening. And WWE was, like, huge. Like, we watched it as a family when I was around, like, me being 5 or 6. So, I mean, I could see that being a dream of somebody's then.
Well, yeah, but it's like, it's no different than a small child, like, being like, I'm going to be Superman when I grow up. Oh, you know what I mean? Okay. Like, and I mean, it's very well possible. I'm not saying wrestle. I don't know. But I just want to emphasize, this is what you are taking unaccompanied by an adult to interview and interrogate. He doesn't have the capacity to defend himself like what you and I would.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how to rationally debate and be like, I did not do this. Okay? That's why I want to tell you all the facts. So, he gets there. He's under the impression he's going to get a $35,000 reward because there was a reward out there. And in his mind, he was like, I thought I could get my dad a truck. That breaks my fucking heart because they were on a fixed income. They didn't have a lot. And that's not to speak any negativity about them. But we're in the deep, deep South. They were in a trailer park. I don't mean anything negative about it. It's just, okay. So he denies. He's denying. He's like, but I don't have anything to do with any of this. Okay. So they decide they're going to give him a polygraph. That makes perfectly good sense. They ask him 10 questions. And what do you know? According to them, he failed this polygraph. He's being deceptive. He's lying. Yeah.
But you said they couldn't provide proof.
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
Okay.
So the police are like, so you're lying, Jesse. You know you are. Lie detector test. This polygraph here shows deception. So Brian Ridge, who was one of the detectives on the case, he's interrogating him. He decides he's going to draw a circle on a piece of paper, and he puts 2 dots inside the circle, and he puts a dot on the outside of the circle. And he goes, "All right, Jesse, these two dots in this circle, that's Damien Eccles, and that's Jason Baldwin. And this dot outside the circle, that's you. So are you out of the circle with us, police? Are you in the circle with the 2 murders?" Like, what do you expect him to say when you say that? So he's like, well, I'm not in the circle. I didn't kill anybody. I guess I'm out here. Yeah. So at this point, this is when they begin to tape record. Okay.
Yeah, they're manipulating him. Yeah, that's sick.
So they have manipulated him before. Okay. So then they turn on the tape recorder. And this is where things get really messy. So this is important. Okay. So he opens up to the investigators that him, Jason, and Damien are in a cult. Okay. They're in a cult. And they like to go to Robin Hood Hills. And Jesse actually said in this and you can listen to this. It's online. You can actually listen to the interrogation, and when you listen to it, you're like, "Fuck am I listening to?" But he says, "We like to go out and kill dogs and stuff."
Oh God.
Yeah. He's like, "We like to kill dogs and stuff." And they asked him. Apparently, something got brought up about a girlfriend, and they're like, "Well, what do you do with the girlfriends?" And he's like, "Well, we screw and stuff." Like,
oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what he said though. That they're probing, so they've got him. Like, they like to go to Robin Hood Hills. Remember, Robin Hood Hills is where all of this happened at. So here's the issue: he gave numerous incoherent statements. The time is a big piece because first he says that Jason called him at 9:00 in the morning, okay, and wants him to go to Robin Hood Hills. Well, that doesn't make sense because we know our crime happened later in the evening. So were you in the woods all day? right? And they would try to be like, well, no, let's go back to the timepiece because you couldn't have been there at 9. So they're literally coaching him what to say.
Yeah.
So then he's like, okay, I was there at noon. We were there at noon. And they say, well, where were the boys at? Well, they were in the woods. Well, what about school? Well, they skipped school. Well, we know that's a lie. Because they were, remember in the beginning, we talked about the fact they got out of school. The only one that got out of school early was the Byers boy. He got sent home. He got in trouble. So that already is not, a valid statement because we know that they went to school till 3 o'clock. So if they're there at 12, there's no way. Did they just sit there and wait all evening? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But remember, Damien and Jesse dropped out of school, so they weren't in school. But Jason was still a student. And he was a model student. He was at school that day. So there's no way that the time thing is a big piece.
Yeah.
And that comes back up in court. He said, this is what he was quoted. So again, child murder. So if that bothers you, you may want to fast forward. But just know that Jesse is just playing with what these fucktards want to hear. So he said that the little boys came over. And this is this is a direct quote from him. So it's going to kind of sound very slow. I know that sounds bad, but this is a direct quote. All right. He said, the little boys came on over. I seen Damien hit this one boy real bad. He said Jason turned around and hit Steve Branch. And then he said Michael Moore took off running. So I chased him, got him, held him down till him and Damien and Jason. He's talking about very horrific things that they did then, but in a very monotone way. Do you get what? Like, there's no emotion behind it.
Yeah.
It's very monotone, like you are reciting, like you're
very
like
flat,
you're
like
in
you're
class.
Yeah.
Right, like you're reading in class.
Yeah.
And so Jesse then said, okay, again, trigger warning, that he had nothing to do with raping and killing the boys, that he saw what they started doing and it bothered him real bad, so
he took off what? Sorry, you cut out.
No, you're good. He took off running.
Oh.
That bothered him. Yeah, he was fine holding Michael down, all that, but he saw what they started doing and it bothered him, and he took off running. Now, they take this as a solid confession. Like, they're like, all right, we got them. Here we go.
Oh,
Mind
shit.
you, they have no fucking evidence other than what Jesse has said. Okay? That they've got all this bullshit. It goes on for hours. They interrogated this boy for hours. Unaccompanied by an adult.
Yeah.
Who's a boy on the special needs spectrum. No adult.
Oh
and
God.
they took it, they solidified it, and they're like, here we go. So what did they do? June 3rd, 1993. They go and they arrest Jason and Damien. Okay? Because they already have Jesse in custody. And here they were like, well, guess what? I know we told you we were going to give you this reward, but we're not going to give you that now because you're under capital. Can you imagine? Here he thought, I can get my dad a truck. He was babysitting for the woman that he'd been helping watch her kids, not realizing that she was out for a fucking witch hunt. Probably to get the $35,000 to help her with her check fraud. I'm just going to throw that out there. But yeah. So here, this sweet boy is sitting in a jail cell, and they go to arrest Damien and Jason. So that day, okay, this is what, get ready. That day, they're at Damien's. Damien, his sister, and Jason are sitting on a couch watching TV, being typical teenagers, okay? All of a sudden, his sister hears something, Damien's sister, so she peeks out the window and there was a slew of cops running to the door, beats on the door. Damien answers. He has a gun pointed right between his eyes, telling him to move. So he moves. They handcuff him. They're telling him he's under arrest. Yes, he looks at his sister. He says, don't worry, I'll be home later. Like, he's like, this is my life now. Like, every day of my life, this is my life now. Don't worry, I'll be home. So, Jason, because again, they've been harassing Damien. We know that. They questioned Jason.
Yeah.
And when Jason's mother was like, I've had enough, alone, they would harass Jason when Jason would be at Damien's house. Remember, they were going there on a repetitive thing, asking them questions all the time, twisting everything that they were saying. So here's Jason. Damien's sister is absolutely, I mean, can you imagine? You have people coming in your house pointing guns at you when all you're doing is sitting there watching TV. Mm-hmm. Your brother's under arrest. She's crying like she doesn't know how to respond. This is very traumatic. Jason's hugging her on the couch and he's going to be okay. It's all going to be all right. We're fine. And then what do? They tell Jason to get up and he's under arrest. And he talks about in that moment, he's like, it was like everything was slow motion. Like, I was like, is this really fucking happening to me right now? Knowing that they weren't there, that they had nothing to do with any of this. How disrespectful this is to three little boys, okay? 3 little boys who were brutally murdered. And you're wasting your time dependent on somebody that wears all black and listens to heavy metal music because you don't like it?
He looks like
That's
a punk.
what it is. Yeah, he's a punk. He did it. Yeah. All right. So they take Jason to the police station. Obviously, they're all 3 separate, right? Like, they can't be around each other.
Right.
They start interrogating Jason. And they're like, your friend just told us that you were part of this, that you and Damien did. He's like, well, I don't know who this friend is, but he's lying. Like, they didn't tell him at the time it was Jesse. But he's like, they're lying. And they're like, you're under arrest. That's it. That's it. Gitchell, okay, I think we talked about him in the very beginning. He's such a douchebag. The very following day held a police press conference, okay? He's saying, we have the murderers in custody, blah, 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 all the things, right? So one of the media people, one of the news people are like, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how solid is your case? You ready for this? He says, it's an 11.
Oh.
Yeah.
What a cocky
I mean, they
motherfucker.
went in. Yeah.
Bad.
So a local judge that was assigned to the case said all records in the investigation would be sealed, which meant that the media had no access to anything. Which I get that some records are sealed, but not everything.
Right.
But they wanted to make sure that they didn't have access to anything. So all you hear, we've arrested 3 teenagers who all wear black, who practice witchcraft, who listen to heavy metal music, and this is what went in the paper. So what do you expect the public to think?
That they found the murderers.
You're right, that they found the murderers, and that they're devil-worshipping punky assholes.
Yeah.
Like,
that's
no
good.
What they painted.
Yeah.
So this raged the public, obviously. The public is them, like, they would chant outside the courthouse that they wanted them dead. They wanted them to get the death penalty. Yeah, well, they're under the impression that these 3 people are child murderers. They like to sacrifice children and animals. That's what the media painted because that's what the police provided.
Sorry, my goodness.
And meanwhile, there's a murderer on the loose. Let's just be realistic.
There's a murderer on the loose. Yeah,
but
running free because these boys are being entertained as murderers.
I think that in this area, this arrest resulted in people then going to church more. You know what I mean? Like, they were seeking guidance from their religious, authorities or whatever you want to call it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But then what did they do? They're preaching on their Sunday sermon that Metallica and Dungeons and Dragons and all these things, that's the gateway to hell. That's what inspires your kids to, decide that they want to join the cult and that they, they're going to worship the
water
devil.
Boy and the mom. That's the devil's music.
So I watched that just the other day, and I was thinking of our podcast, and she must have been in West Memphis. And it was awful. I was like, it wasn't in Louisiana. This was in West Memphis. Yeah.
Adam Sandler got it wrong.
Yeah, Adam Sandler, you fucked up. Sorry, my friend. So, okay, the court, obviously, they assigned the three boys, Jason, Jesse, and Damien, all have different attorneys, which we know is anything common, right? They're given three different attorneys. Dan Stidham was Jesse Miss Kelly's attorney, okay? And he actually quoted, he says in a documentary, I was like everybody else. I thought they were guilty because this is what the media painted out. Like, they're just devil worshipping murderers. And he said, I went to meet Jesse with the impression we're gonna work out. You'll plead guilty. We'll work out it because at this point the death penalty is on the table for them. That's what we're facing.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah, for some do, but he said I went in with this impression that okay, he's guilty. He's confessed. We're just gonna work out like some deal where I get him off of death row because that's what he's facing. Okay. Now, Paul Ford was Jason's lawyer, and Felt Price, Damien. Okay. What when Dan Stidham goes and meets Jesse for the first time, he goes into jail again. He's under about, what you confess to, you're guilty. This is what I probably out for you.
Yeah.
This is what I see the prosecution agreeing to. When he goes in, he didn't know he would leave thinking, I don't think any three they did. And he said he goes in and Jesse adamant, I didn't do that.
He's adamant.
This
what?
boy.
Here, back up just a little bit. I don't know if you're too close to the mic.
Am I too? Oh,
it keeps
is that
just
better?
Cutting out a little bit. You still can make out what you're saying.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this boy, Jesse, kept saying the word Satan. He didn't even know what the term Satan was. But yeah, he's a Satan worshiper. Think about it. Dan Stidham had to educate Jesse Miss Kelly on what Satanism was. He called it satin, as in the fabric satin. Yes. But yet you're going to say that this boy is a devil worshiper and did a sacrifice for Satan and he can't even see him.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. So the first thing that Dan looks at is Jesse's polygraph. Okay, because he's Jesse's attorney. He's not the other boy's attorney, but he's got to look at how he saved Jesse. Okay,
of course.
They said that Jesse failed this. He got another expert who looked at it and said he didn't fail if he passed the polygraph. The only thing that he failed, the only deceptive answer was in one of the questions was if Jesse ever did drugs, and he lied about that because he was afraid he would get in trouble. That's what was on his mind.
I'm the girls.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. How dare you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So he's not marked that off his list. Like, so they're saying he failed this polygraph when it's very evident. Like, this guy's like, he didn't fail this. He passed this. The only thing he was deceptive about is if he drugged, which was probably only pot. Let's
I mean,
realistic.
Who were the boys to say that he did or didn't pass? The boys don't know to question it or what it all means.
Well, that's they did that as a scare tactic.
Yeah.
That's all that was. Yeah. Now, the timepiece is a big piece because he looks at the confession. He's listening to the audio. Remember, I told you that Jesse goes back and forth like noon, 9. When we last know that they were seen at 6 p.m., remember? That was the last known time that all three of those were seen alive. Noon is during the time that boys are in school, so that doesn't make any logical sense. And he's able to see that the cops were able to push Jesse to answer the way they needed him to because they changed like the verbiage. Well, was it dark? Was it getting dark when you came out of the woods? That's how they were able to get him to push to confessing that.
Well, we've all seen interrogation videos and documentaries on TikTok, wherever, social media, and they're good at getting the answers they want to get, regardless of who they're questioning.
So let me tell you something. Part of my job, where we deal like with the forensic population, the amount of evidence that the Commonwealth attorney gives me, like I get the police report. Sometimes they'll send me the interrogation tapes so I can watch them. I promise you, they're not a shit show.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
Good to know.
yeah. Now they're really good about. I hate to say it in this term, but manipulating you into telling them things,
Yeah.
right? They're good at smoothing things over, but it's not like this. This is like this is so terrible. I talked to Kurt. Remember Kurt? I tell you about
Yeah.
Kurt all the time. He's supposed to be looking at this because I was like, I just want to know, since you did like interrogations, he worked homicide, what your thoughts are as a captain and how you would have handled this in an authoritative manner, because I'm just really curious like what his thoughts are. So hopefully I'll have an answer
Oh, cool.
for next week's episode. Yeah. But anywho, so another piece is, remember, all three boys that were like they were hogtied with their shoelaces. Remember?
Yes.
Okay. Jesse told police that the boys was tied with brown laces. None of the shoelaces were brown.
None of the shoelaces on the actual bodies were brown.
Mm-mm. Yeah, he said that they were brown laces, but none of them were brown. So that's a big thing. Like, you would think that you wouldn't mistake that color.
Yeah.
Not if you truly did that crime. Okay.
Oh, wow.
He really, when he went in there, Dan Stidham talks about Jesse again at his IQ level. He had lacked so much insight on what the consequences really were. He really thought he was doing a good thing.
Yeah.
I have no questions about it. He thought he was going to get himself $35,000 and buy his daddy a new truck.
No.
When really all
Breaks
this
my
was
heart.
a fucking witch hunt. Yes, I know, it breaks my heart too. Now, false confessions were not something that was really well known during this time. Like, they didn't have a lot of, you didn't hear of this a whole lot. Now, Judge David Burnett was assigned to this case. He's a dickwad, by the way.
Oh. Well, my only thing is a lot of people, like, I feel like, I don't know how to feel about the justice system when you could have somebody completely innocent and they're facing a charge and they've lost all hope that they're going to win this. And then they hand them a plea deal that says, if you say you're guilty of this charge, you'll get a lesser sentence. So they're kind of being backed into a wall to say that they did it when sometimes maybe they didn't, just because they want a lesser sentence or a less harsh punishment.
Right. Absolutely. And it sucks.
It does suck.
It really does. But, all right, so Judge David Burnett has been assigned to this case. And he decides that Jason and Damien have to be tried separately. Okay. Which makes sense because Jesse is the one that did the confession. Okay. So you're going to have Jesse on one trial and Jason and Damien trial. Okay. So the police then go to visit Jesse in jail, and because the only evidence they have is Jesse's confession. They don't have any physical evidence on either one of them. They have fucking nothing. Like, absolutely nothing. So they go to the jail. They tell Jesse, they're like, listen, if you testify against Damien and Jason, we won't seek the death penalty on you. Yes, we won't seek the death penalty on you.
See, that's just what I was talking about. So they're going to freaking manipulate this boy to say, yeah, they did it.
Jesse refused to do it because he said, I didn't do this, and neither did they. Yeah. Yeah, he said, I will not. I'm not going to testify. So their case is weak, obviously. They need that testimony.
Yeah.
But, like, that's all they have.
That's the only reason why they could arrest
that testimony is a shit show anyway. We know that. So what did they decide to do? Any ideas?
Who?
They issued 2 search warrants to search Jason and Damien's house.
Wow.
Yes. And they went, and Damien's sister talks about that day, and she said there was not 1 inch of that house that they did not turn. And they did take some things with them. Remember, in case you have forgot, Damien practices Wiccan. He is an active Wiccan. He has books about
We're
the,
taking all this, and because he's a
yes.
Wiccan, he that's evidence.
Well, we'll talk about there is a huge difference between being a Satanist and a Wiccan.
Big.
They are two completely different things.
Well, we talked about the difference
Two
between a
yes.
pentacle and a pentagram. So
Yes, yes.
yeah, and Wiccans
there's
don't have the upside down one, where Satanists and they like it on one point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So 10 months later, this is when our trial. Okay. We're not really going to dive into Jesse's trials as much as Jason and Damien's. Okay. And I mean, you're free to dive into that. There's not as much about Jesse's. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but I want to paint the picture with Jason and Damien's because those are really, Jesse just kind of got this, if that makes sense. They all three were into, if you know what I mean, but like they really had it out, Damien. That's the one. And then these two are just guilty by association because they're friends with somebody that the community thought was. That's what it all boils to. So, 10 months later is when the trial begins. The media, I mean, this was a big thing. This was like, we're going back to like when Mendez brothers, like like they were in the room filming this. There are people out there screaming at the top of their lungs when they are taken out of the police. We want you to die. Mm-hmm. Yeah. John Byers, remember John Byers? He's Michael Byers' father. He said, if they want to worship the devil, I hope that they get to meet him soon. I mean, but in these parents of the victims' minds, I get it. Like we trust the police to help us. That's who you think killed your son. I get it. I probably, if that would have been me, I think I probably would have looked at it in the same light that he did. I hope you get to meet the devil real soon.
I mean, let's be honest, even today, everything is manipulated to make you think a certain way, and that's why you really can't fully trust. You have to know your resources and what's reliable and what's not, because the news, they're here to scare you. And the news is telling these people these boys killed these young boys. And so everybody at the trial trusts the news outlet and the cops. They must have. We hate them.
And the news outlet didn't get any access to any of what we're about to talk about. All they had access to when they were initially arrested is the fact that we're solely basing this arrest on religious opinions.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. So, all right. Excuse me. So the first person called on the stand was Detective Brian Ridge. Do you remember him?
Yes.
Okay. He's a dick. In case you all forgot, most of these people are assholes.
Yeah.
Remember, Mom was like, when are y'all going to cover an asshole? Well, we are, except all the other people are assholes. The prosecutor that's on this is Fogelman, and he's an asshole too. Just so you know, like, yes, they picked the biggest, douchiest asswads that they possibly can. To cover all of this. The judge is a douche, Fogelman's a douche, Detective Brian Ridge is a douche, Gary Gitchell, they're all douchey douches, okay? Just in case you forgot, yes. So, yeah. So the first person called is Brian Ridge, and he describes the scene, okay? And because honestly, they need to win the jury emotionally. Okay?
Right.
Because you don't really have any fucking evidence, dickwad. So they got to kind of give them emotion. We need to do an emotional play. So he's talking about the scene. He's talking about going into the muddy creek water and feeling around and gradually lifting these boys up out of the water and the sticks that's stuck in the clothes. Of course, that's gut-wrenching to listen to. They show crime scene photos. They're going into graphic detail. And I understand things are about, but I mean, they really wanted to paint it out. Okay. So some of the family of the victims had to get up and leave.
Oh, I'm
They're like, I
sure.
can't. I would have. I couldn't have seen that. So when the defense comes up to cross-examine, when after they're talking about the scene and stuff, they bring up the bloody Bojangles. The bloody Bojangles comes back, yes.
Okay.
And they're asking about, remember that blood swab I told you about? That comes into play. Did you test the blood swab? That's a logical question to ask. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's the same night that all this happened. Are you ready? They conveniently lost that piece of evidence.
Stop.
It was never tested.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
And and they're like, "Excuse me? You lost you lost a swab from the bloody Bojangles. They didn't call it bloody Bojangles in court, but you lost this swab." And then he's like, "Yeah, that was my mistake. I'm sorry." Like, it's
Why
not a
is
small
that
mistake.
acceptable? Like, why? Because
It's
that's like losing your job type of stuff. That makes no sense.
Well, it's not like Colin forgetting his English homework in his locker. I forgot, Mom.
This is somebody's life
Sorry.
you're playing
This
with.
is three boys who were brutally murdered, and you don't have enough respect for their case to actually thoroughly swab because you're more worried that Damien is out there practicing Wiccan?
Yeah. Well, and
That's the
then
reality that we
in the
live in.
balance, you've got three older minors that are literally facing death.
This should not just be the West Memphis
And it's like,
3, it should be the West Memphis 6. Because you have 6 victims.
absolutely.
3 little boys and 3 teenage boys.
Yeah.
Because they're different. Because they're weird. Yeah. Oh, we haven't even got you ain't heard shit yet. Oh, like I told you, this
Okay.
sounds like it's a really like one of those really cheesy God Lifetime movies that you watch and you're like, never. But it did. I'm sorry. It really did. All of this played out just like this. So they dismiss him, okay? The prosecution then called for Dr. Peretti to come to the stand. He is the person who performed the autopsy on the
Okay.
3 boys. Now he talks graphically, trigger warning, about how Christopher Byers probably died from loss of blood. Because remember, this is supposed to be a horrific scene, okay? It's god awful. There's, well, it is a horrific scene. I shouldn't say it like that. It is a horrific scene, but there was no blood. No blood anywhere. There's head trauma, there's genital trauma, there has to be blood, but there wasn't any. So he talks about how Christopher Byers died from loss of blood. 3 months before the trial, Fogelman, the prosecutor, had divers dispatched to a pond that was behind Jason Baldwin's house. They were only underwater for 30 minutes when they magically pulled up this saturated knife and was like, I found it. Voila, I found it. Yes. So they show that knife as they bring that knife that was brought up out of the pond. Okay, we're going to talk about it. Don't worry. That's supposedly the knife that cut the scrotum. Okay, because they do know it had to be a saturated knife, but so this knife is supposedly the knife that did that. So defense cross-examined, and although Peretti said that they bled to death, there was no blood, and the saturated knife could have been any saturated, not necessarily that knife. Mind you, the whole reason that knife was in the pond, Jason had got in trouble or something, and his mom threw that knife in that pond a year before this crime ever happened.
I'm
Yeah,
curious
it was
as to
just one
why,
of
but
those
okay.
things like, I don't think he was like doing anything like violent, but like she's like, no, I'm gonna show your ass, and then just did a typical
Shit.
like one of those mom things. So that knife, by the way, yeah,
Yeah.
just yeah. Okay. Prosecution then brings up Michael Carson. Now, Michael Carson, what the whole reason he's a witness into this is he was in a juvenile detention with Jason Baldwin. Remember, Jason and Damien did have some run-ins with the law for really petty, stupid shit. I'm not saying what they did was okay, but they weren't out killing people. They were just being stupid teenage boys,
Yeah.
like, graffiti and shoplifting and just all those things. Michael Carson was in there for aggravated. Okay. So he says, now, mind you, he had never had a conversation with Jason Baldwin before. They didn't become best friends. They weren't telling each other everyone's lifelong secrets, but he claims that Jason told him he dismembered the child and placed parts in his mouth and sucked the children's blood. You've never had a conversation with anybody like this guy before, but you're telling him that you committed a murder?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Something seems weird about that to me. That doesn't make much
Not at
sense.
all.
Yeah. Um, Jason, in one of the documentaries, he talks about that he had never told Michael Carson any of that. And he's telling his attorney, I have never told him any of that. I barely even spoke 2 words to that kid, like at all. Defense believes that Michael Carson did this only to get a deal charge. That makes really good sense to me.
A what charge? It cut out.
His robbery. Remember, he
Oh,
was in the juvenile detention center for aggravated robbery. It
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Dr. Dale Griffith. He's my favorite person in all of this. Okay.
I love
Oh, yes.
sarcasm. It's the greatest.
Oh, yes. So he takes the stand. He studied cult. Okay. Dr. Dale Griffith. I'm going to emphasize doctor, meaning he
Okay.
has a PhD. He has studied cults. And his whole purpose of his testimony is he explains how this murder would fit a cult murder. Okay, why the Satanism takes effect makes sense. I would want to
Yeah.
have someone there that's an expert in that. Absolutely. So he talks about how say like occults look at blood as the life force. They bathe in it, they drink it, they
Okay.
use it for others, which is his explanation as to why there's there that I guess Damien and Jason never and Jesse just kind of they must have took vials with them. I don't know, and they're like hold still while that makes really good sense. Jars they canned it. I don't. But he's saying that it had to have been where again I don't know, but yeah.
It
So
had to
part
be
of
what?
Griffith's
Snorted?
testimony stored.
Stored. Okay.
Yeah, they stored it for later
Jesus.
use because it's their life force. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
So part of Griffith's testimony was based on books that was taken out of Damien's room.
Mm.
Um, one was the drawing of the pentagram that we talked about, like he's being a typical teenager. He also had an evolution of witchcraft book, and it just kind of talked about like how it started. It had all these different chapters, different religions, because Damien was really interested in religion as a whole. He was an active Wiccan, but he was very curious. He liked to learn about other. There was a chapter in there that was dedicated to Satanism, and that chapter was underlined in red ink. So they used that as part of their
Of course, the evidence.
testimony. Um, he also testified that black was part of the cult, and they wore all black. That's all that was in their wardrobe was black. So therefore, because you like black, you're in a cult.
I mean, that
Yes,
explains me. Now I wear mostly black. I mean, geez Louise, I must have
I
murdered
would hate to
somebody.
know what this man would say about me. Anywho, so defense gets up. They cross examine. Now Paul Ford. I really liked this part. Although there's some things about Paul Ford that pissed me off because I think he could have done better with Jesse. Not Jesse, excuse me, Jason. But I like this. So he looks at Paul Griffith and he goes, "What classes did you take when you got your doctorate?" And he looks at him very puzzled and confused. He's like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "What classes did you take when you were obtaining your doctorate degree?" And he responds, "None."
Oh.
To which, yes. So
Uh-huh.
Paul Ford, yes, pulls out this piece of paper and he goes, "Does this look familiar?" Okay. And he's like, "I don't know. I don't recall seeing it." He's like, "Well, you filled it out." Okay. His so called PhD came from a mail ordered form It was a mail correspondence. He did not go to a college
Nice.
accredited program and get his PhD.
Mm.
So Damien's attorney that felt Price jumps up and he's like, I want to dismiss all of his testimony. He's not an expert. He doesn't even have a real fucking doctorate. Unfortunately, they kept his testimony and they said that they had to use it because you don't have to have a PhD to be an expert. If that's the case,
fair, but because people learn by doing. But when it comes to something like a PhD, okay.
well, that literally tells us this whole blood life preserve thing and the black and the fact that he went through Damien's books and he's like, oh, this is underlined. That's all opinion. That's all that is.
Yeah, I agree.
If we can all get our PhD and be doctor whatever, there's no reason I should be investing all this money in student loans. Fuck, I'm going to do a mail-in order and I will be Dr. Bauckham going forward. Yeah,
I like the sound
script?
of that.
I know, Nathan's like, yeah. But, that's the reality of it. That's ignorant. God, it makes me mad. So, the testimony stayed. Prosecution then reveals a red bathrobe that was at Jason's house. Now, when they had performed their autopsy stuff, they did find red microscopic fibers that was some on them, which means that had to be transferred, from someone onto them. None of the red fibers matched what the little boys had. They're not saying it's those very fibers that was on the red robe, but they're saying that there are similarities.
They're probably going through stuff like red. What is red?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that red bathrobe. Yeah.
Take it.
Yeah. So they take that and confiscate it, and they're trying to say that there's similarities. They can't even say that this is it. There's just similarities.
Jesus Christ! At this point, put me in. I could be a detective.
Right, I know.
I'd do 10 times of a better job. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, now Damien has to go to the stand.
Okay.
So we're putting Damien up. So Del Price has Damien talk about his interests. Okay. And he's responding how he loved to skateboard, how he liked to talk on the phone. He loved to read, and he read primarily about religion. That was his big interest. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing. He talks about how he enjoys studying primarily like the Wiccan religion. And he then goes in to talk about that, how Wiccan religion recognizes that there's a goddess, not necessarily a god. And that the reason he doesn't believe in God is because God is a male. We're referred to as God's children. Therefore, God couldn't have had us because he's a male. Women give birth. It's a logical response. He's not wrong. He talks about how they have a higher regard to and a close involvement with Mother Nature. They don't want to harm anybody. They don't believe in harming other people.
Not that, because to them, Christians and stuff like that, they feel that God created us, so that's in the form that we're his children, which whatever, that's fine. It's how you look at it, but that's also how Wiccans, and it's not just, there's multiple gods and goddesses in the Wiccan religion. You have, all different, goddesses of this and god of that, and it's like that, but... Yeah, and they do worship a lot of people. Oh, it's Satan. No, they worship literally Earth. The phases of the moon, right. The changing of the seasons. That's why we celebrate. I grew up in it, but Ostara is Easter. Yule is Christmas. Samhain is Halloween. All that is based on the changing of the seasons and the time of year it is, and the phases of the moon.
That's Biggie literally running back and like a fucking psycho. Well, the whole point of it is Del Price wants the jury to understand there is a difference in Wiccan religion and
Mm-hmm.
Satanism. There's a
Big.
huge difference. I mean,
Wiccans do not believe in heaven nor hell.
right? They don't believe in that. Don't they believe in you become one with the earth in a sense, like a tree or a flower, dirt.
Everybody has
Just
their
you get what
own
I'm saying. Like
thoughts of reincarnation and stuff like that, but they don't believe in hell, so how are they Satanists?
exactly. Well, and that's what Dell wants to paint out is there is a difference,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't meet that.
Yeah.
So prosecutors get up to cross-examine. Okay. Yes. And they seize on the underlined sections of Satanism and of witchcraft books that Damien had. Okay. Now let me explain how Damien got these books. Okay. He said he happened to be walking. The public library had like a cart out with books that they wanted to get rid of. They were 10 cents each, and he loves to read about religion.
Yeah.
So he got a handful of them. He paid them. He took them home, and some of them were already underlined. Specifically that one, and he said, I just assumed somebody probably wrote a report or something. I mean, why would we not believe him? Now we have to think about
I mean,
something.
library stamp books, were they stamped? Were they marked?
Yes, they were.
Stickered?
Yeah, they were stamped.
Yeah.
It showed it on there. He wasn't lying.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't, at this point, we can't prove was the underlining in there before he got it or after. But even
Yeah.
if it was, what does that matter?
It doesn't.
So, um, they then immediately ask him, "Did you kill Steve? Did you kill Stevie and Michael and Christopher?" To which he's like, "No, I didn't kill them at all." They ask him then, "Are you familiar with Aleister de Crawley?" Do you know who that is?
Mm-mm.
1800s. I don't know where he was from. I'm not very familiar, but I do know he was a Satanist.
Okay.
And he did believe in human sacrifices. Like he wrote books about it.
Oh my god. The point they're
He
trying to
wrote books about it.
prove.
Yes. Damien testified, I know of him. I know who he is, but I've never read anything by him. Okay. Um, they then, okay, present documents that was pulled out of Damien's room. One of them looks like a code, like you couldn't make it out. And Damien responds that he was writing like a coded alphabet, like a typical teenager, okay? And he's like, I just thought it would be really cool. Like, I wonder how many times in his mind he was thinking, am I really being questioned?
Yeah.
The fact that I'm just being a dumb kid. Like, I mean, really. The issue is, remember how I told you that Damien had people like pick on him all the time? And he just
Yeah.
became so monotone and took up for himself. This whole time he's giving his defense, he's being monotone. He's being the like kind of asshole-ish guy because it's like what he's gone through his whole life all because he's different. And they held that against him. Like, why are you being so monotone about it? Like, if you didn't do it, why are you? So he's like, that's all that is. The issue is they decode that, and it did spell out Aleister McCrawley's name. So they used that as like, I guess that was idol or whatever. And he may have really did write that.
Yeah.
Or and whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean that oh my God, I'm going to make a sacrifice to Aleister. But they use that against him. They then bring up the interrogation where Damien explains the crime scene. Remember the previous episode we talked about that, and they made the comment to him, only a killer would know that?
Yeah.
He's like, well, I knew that because the media had painted it out. And they said it in court yet again, only a killer would tell, even
Yeah, because there's no way to
printed
get
in
that
the front page
information.
of the paper. Yeah. He was on the stand for 2 days. He went through that for 2 solid
Oh,
days.
that's stressful.
Mm-hmm. So when Jason came up, this is the issue that I have with Paul Ford, okay? He decides He tells Jason that the best approach at this point would be to turn the tables on Damien. Let Damien take the heat. We're just going to testify kind of against him in a sense. Let him take it. And Jason refused to do that. He's like, that's my best friend. I'm not doing that. He didn't do that. Neither did I.
Good.
So his attorney did not have him testify at all. Yeah, which sucked for him. That came back and bit him in the fucking ass.
Yeah.
But Jason's attorney then asked another expert that the defense had called that examined those red fibers. Remember bathrobe red fibers?
Mm-hmm.
And that expert said there was no similarities in those fibers whatsoever. Yes.
It was Freddy
So March
Krueger.
17th.
I'm convinced.
Yes. It was Freddy Krueger, yeah.
The fibers of
oh my god,
sweater.
That makes more sense.
It does make more
than
sense
what
than
they
these-
have built, yes. So March 17th, 1994, this is closing statements came in, okay?
Okay.
John Fogelman, the prosecution, had the audacity to look right at the jury and say that Damien had no soul. That's pretty fucking
What
deep
the
to say. Yeah. He's like, he has no soul.
Well,
You're
I mean,
in like the
he's
Bible
got a
Belt.
job. Yeah, he's got a job to do, and that's to convince the jury in closing statements. Like, he's bad.
I know, but he's still a dick. So
Yeah.
when Price said that he wanted the jury to focus on the facts, not the opinions, which I think is a very, he's like, I want you to really focus on facts, not opinions. And it would be wrong to convict him, all because he's a weird teenager. I mean, it's can you imagine being hired to do that job and be like, I cannot believe I have to take all my college education and really build a defense. Like, this guy's weird. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So jury deliberation lasted 1 day, and they reached a verdict. Okay. One day. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Damien Eccles was found guilty on capital murder for all three. Jason Baldwin was guilty for all three. And I want to backtrack for a second. When they were in deliberation, Jason talks about how him and Damien have not really got to talk. They're in court at the same table, but you can't talk. He said when they were deliberating, they got to sit at the end of the table. This is what breaks my heart. They were eating snacks and playing a Game Boy, and they didn't talk anything about that case at all. They just talked about what they normally would talk about as friends.
Wow. That speaks volumes, because this is heavy. Like,
Yeah.
this was all I'd be
They
able
didn't
to
say-
hyperfixate on.
Yeah, they played a Game Boy, and they were being boys.
Yeah.
Because that's what they were. They were boys. They weren't grown men. I mean, sure, Damien was, of age, but they were boys.
Yeah.
Their brain had not completely developed yet. I mean, they didn't talk anything about it. So they were both found guilty. The following day, they returned for their sentencing. And at this point, you're either getting the death penalty or you're getting life without parole.
Yeah.
Damien Eccles was sentenced to the death penalty by lethal injection.
Oh, my God.
Jason Baldwin was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole.
How do they get different sentencing? Is it based on involvement?
I think that this was, it was like separate trials, same trial, but each one's different. And I think that they painted Damien out the ringleader, Okay. And I think, he was the one that actually was the active Wiccan. I don't know what Jason's and Jesse's religious beliefs were, and it doesn't matter. But I think that's the whole reason. And ultimately, we know from the very beginning, because his fucking juvenile probation officer, Gary Driver, would drive around at night looking for fucking cults making sacrifices, which we still need to know how many he found. And he had it out for Damien. He hated him.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to.
I mean, little do we know
But
that's what all of our teenage boys are out doing on, we're going to the football game, but meanwhile, they're not really at the football game. They're in the woods.
they're looking for cults.
No,
Yeah.
they're in the
Oh, no,
woods
they're in
being
the
a
woods.
cult.
That's right. They're being a cult. They're not
That's the
looking
cool
for.
thing to do.
Yeah. Now, Jesse, in his trial, he was guilty, and he was sitting without. Okay.
He was guilty and sentenced to life without parole?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Jason and Jesse both are given life without parole. So, what we don't know, though, is about a decade from now, something will change that no one saw coming, and this is where I leave you hanging.
No. I was like, ooh,
no.
what? Oh,
Yes.
bitch,
Nope.
you guys.
This is where I leave hanging. So then the next episode, we're going to talk more about what life behind bars was for them, what is about to happen, and possible suspects.
Man. I'm in
All right,
it.
Ash.
I'm in it.
I know she is. What do they need to do?
Well, of course, you need to like, follow, and subscribe. We're on most social media platforms. If you like to listen, find us on Spotify. If you like to watch while you're listening, find us on YouTube. Give us a like and follow at either of those.
All right.
And come back next week because I need to know what this cliffhanger is.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.